Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we'll start in just a second. I apologize if there's any background noise. I'm live streaming from my home now, and sometimes you have some noises from outside. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in amma ba'd. Inshallah, all is well, and you are all comfortable at your homes or wherever you're at. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to bless us during this Ramadan and after this Ramadan. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our good deeds, ameen, and our efforts. So today's parable is in Surah Yunus, the 10th chapter, and it's verse 24. And this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to a few times in the Quran, and specifically in Surah Al-Kahf, he offers the same parable. So I don't think there's a reason to do this twice and to repeat the parable again once we get towards Surah Al-Kahf. So we'll try and just the same point, same ideas, inshallah. So one session should be enough. And the reason why I chose the one in Surah Yunus is because there's a little bit more context, a little bit broader general context, whereas the context of Surah Al-Kahf is more specific. And again, they both channel into the same point. So in order to better appreciate this parable, we need to begin 2 verses prior. So verse 22 actually, and I'm just going to paraphrase it because the point is not to be a tafsir class, but to focus on the parable itself. So verses 22 and 23, which are the 2 verses prior to the parable, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions a scenario that we can all easily imagine, and that is being on a ship, and when the people are sailing and they're traveling by sea, you'll have times where it's very peaceful, very beautiful, the sun is out, the wind is just right, because you need that wind in order to gain speed and to navigate better. So the wind is just right, it's beautiful, everything is good, to where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even says that they're excited and they're happy about their situation, until another type of wind comes, and that is the wind of a storm, a powerful wind, a very strong wind, and with that comes the storms and the waves as well. Wind is what causes waves. So with that strong wind comes extremely violent and aggressive waves. And now the ship is completely out of control. It is under or at the mercy of these waves, of course, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding by his will subhanahu. So at that point, the captain of the ship and the sailors know that they have no control of their fate now. Right? They know that they're in a situation where they cannot navigate their ship, they cannot steer it, and thus they are simply under the movements of the waves. And if a wave powerful enough comes, a tidal wave, it can very easily turn the ship over. And if the ship is turned over, they're in the middle of the sea or the middle of the ocean. There's nothing they can do. They're just waiting death. So at that point, they realize and they recognize that no one can save them except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does point this out. At that point, they call on Allah mukhlisina lahu-d-din. They call on Allah with all sincerity, with the feeling that everything belongs to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they say, if you save us from this, we are going to be grateful. Right? This happens. We hear about this. Someone is in a plane and there's a lot of turbulence and an engine fails and people start praying and they start calling on God, save us, save us. So this is very common to happen for someone in this situation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points that out. And then in verse 22, he says, when he saved you and put you back on the land, your reaction or your reaction to that was you continue to transgress on this earth without right. So they reached out to Allah. Allah answered their call, and they went back against their promise. So their promise was to be grateful. And we know in Islam, gratitude is really sourced. In fact, it is sourced. It's rooted in Tawheed, monotheism. If you want to be thankful, then worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only Him. That is true gratitude, and that is the source of gratitude. Any other type of gratitude either needs to be branched in this or rooted in this, or it's not true gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they went back against their promise, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, O mankind, your transgressions only come back to haunt you, to harm you. It's mata' al-hayat ad-dunya. You are pursuing the pleasures of this life. That's it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala words it in a way that, the tone, the rhetoric is, you're pursuing something that's so worthless. And we've gone over this in previous parables, how worthless this world really is, what is its true value. When you think of things in the grander picture, including the next life in the equation of life, you find that what this world can offer is so limited that it's not worth being our end all be all. It's not worth centering our lives on, but rather we should pursue the next life. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says right after, ثُمَّ إِلَيْنَا مَرْجِعُكُمْ فَنُنَبِّئُكُم بِمَا كُنتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. And then to us is your return, and we will make you aware of what you used to do. And then the parable enters. Okay, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا مَثَلُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا كَمَاءٍ أَنزَلْنَاهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ فَاخْتَلَطَ بِهِ نَبَاتُ الْأَرْضِ مِمَّا يَأْكُلُ النَّاسُ وَالْأَنْعَامُ حتى إذا أخذت الأرض زخرفها وزينت وظن أهلها أنهم قادرون عليها أتاها أمرنا ليلا أو نهارا فجعلناها حصيدا كأن لم تغن بالأمس كذلك نفصل الآيات لقوم يتفكرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed the parable of this life, the example of this life is like water that comes down from the sky, and then it irrigates, it mixes with the dirt and the earth, causing vegetation to grow. Okay, so the illustration is as follows. Like water is the source of life, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using water to serve as an analogy to our own lives. Okay, so like water comes down and it enters the earth, and then produce comes about. So we as individuals, we start off in a similar scenario, where we come from a father and a mother, and then we are born. Same thing with this whole cycle of rain. مِمَّا يَأْكُلُ النَّاسُ وَالْأَنْعَامُ. And then the vegetation comes out. حتى إذا أخذت الأرض زخرفها وزينت وظن أهلها أنهم قادرون عليها. Until the crops continue to grow until it becomes beautiful. Spring comes around, the flowers are blossoming, it's harvest season, all the fruits and vegetables. You walk outside in a garden, you can smell the flowers, you can smell the fruits and the vegetables. It's beautiful, to the extent that the person feels comfortable with their situation, so much so that they feel like they are in control of the situation. Right? They are in control of their lives. They're in control of their financial situation. The more control we feel we have in our lives, right, that includes a family life, finances, includes our occupation, includes our social life, etc. The more control we feel we have, the more comfortable and rooted we become in that situation. We don't want to leave, right? So for example, when someone owns a home, it's a very difficult decision to leave that home. Why? Because you become rooted in it, and the more you've lived in that home, the more difficult and less likely it is that the person will leave it, because they established themselves there. They have fully understood how this works. They're fully comfortable with it. They've designed the home to where it's to their liking. Their memory is there. And now they feel like their home is their home. They are in full control of it. This is contrary to someone who is renting, for example, right? Renting, we'll just move to some other place, and they don't fully establish themselves in that rental, because they say, well, I don't want to buy something too expensive, furniture that's too expensive, because when we move, it might get scratched or it might break or whatever it is. So they don't fully establish themselves. Why? Because they know that they don't have full control over that home. So when the season reaches its peak and the produce is plentiful in abundance and everything seems nice, we as human beings feel like, okay, this is it. Life, this is what life has to offer, and life is as good as we can imagine and as good as anything we can ask for. It doesn't get better than this. And the person becomes rooted in this life and they begin to forget the next life. And that's why wealth and power and knowledge, these forms of authority and these forms of power, really the ability to influence and be independent, they are a big fitna. They are a fitna, because with these things comes, for example, prestige. It becomes, with it comes, other people become dependent on you. You become an authority figure for those individuals. So when we have these commodities, we feel like this is the life, and we become more and more increasingly comfortable with it, to where we are not ready to leave it. Like yesterday's parable, the individual, because their pursuit of this life, and because of kind of the worldly gain that comes with being a scholar, or the worldly, with that comes prestige and an amount of fame, etc. It can be very deceptive. It's a fitna, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He tests us with hardships, and He tests us also with good things. So when a person gets a promotion, for example, now their salary is 30% higher, or they make a very good profit in a trade, and now they're a millionaire, whatever it is, we need to realize that in that situation is just as much of a trial and fitna, a test, a spiritual test, as poverty and these discomforting situations are. In fact, the wealth is more of a fitna, more of a test than poverty, because poverty, you're in a situation where you're forced to be patient, whereas with wealth, you have the keys of the world in front of you. Do whatever you want. What's stopping you? You have the finance, you have the money to do it, you have the power, you have the network to do it. I mean, it can get really bad. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's showing us that when the crops become fully ripened, right, and ready for harvest, وَظَنَّ أَهْلُهَا أَنَّهُمْ قَادِرُونَ عَلَيْهَا, our perception of life becomes very deceptive. We become comfortable with it, and we feel like we are in control of it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَتَاهَا أَمْرُنَا لَيْلًا أَوْ نَهَارًا فَجَعَلْنَاهَا حَصِيدًا كَأَن لَّمْ تَغْنَ بِالْأَمْسِ. Our command comes either in the day or the night, and we cause that garden, or that plot of land with all the crops, to become hasid. Hasid is to be cut down. So it's fully cut down. كَأَن لَّمْ تَغْنَ بِالْأَمْسِ, to the extent that someone who passes by it will think that there was nothing there before, right? And this, what it's portraying here, is an incident, a life event that completely changes a person's situation, right? Someone can be a multi-millionaire, but death comes at an unexpected time. Someone can be in a CEO position of a Fortune 500 company, and then lo and behold, some economic crash occurs, and they're out. SubhanAllah, it's really humbling, and it really humbles the self when we know that, and we hear that many or some of the homeless people that are wandering around with nothing, right, with dirt on their backs, and their shoes are ripped and their clothes are ripped, and they haven't taken a shower in a while. Some of them were once CEOs of very good companies or well-to-do companies. So something happens all of a sudden and it's all gone, right? كَأَن لَّمْ تَغْنَ بِالْأَمْسِ, as if there was nothing there before. How many corporations were once in existence in America, in fact, over the past few decades, that we don't even remember anymore? They're no longer there. Our youth, for example, don't know what a cassette player is, or a tape that when we were younger, were so accustomed to. It's become obsolete. So likewise, our situation in life, no matter how wealthy we are, can become obsolete. Our profession can become obsolete. A situation might occur where we as a society or a nation becomes obsolete. It falls behind. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is drawing this image in our mind. Like this can happen, like a field of crops can be afflicted with something that completely destroys it, like frost, as the parable in Surah Ali Imran mentioned, like a plague that affects plants, a locust, for example, or a major storm. Right? If a tornado comes during harvest season or just before harvest season, well, all that is gone. An entire year of work is gone. Take, for example, our current situation. I was discussing with someone yesterday that milk, what's going on with milk and lettuce and a lot of flowers, for example. These farmers who their financial flourishment is dependent on this, and they put a lot of work into producing these things. Now they're just throwing it in the trash. Every day millions of gallons across America of milk is thrown in the drain. Now there's a lot of work that's put into that. They have to wake up very early morning, maybe even before Fajr, and they have to milk those camels, and they have to bottle it and then transport it, and all of that is going to waste. And these farmers who were once doing well are now, because of an invisible invader, are now in a very, very tough situation. That is life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responding to the previous two verses, the human nature and the unfortunate human habits of being inconsistent in what they know is the truth. They know that they are responsible in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yet their behavior is very inconsistent with their beliefs. We feel that if things are going all right, then that means everything is going all right for everyone else, and nothing can affect us, nothing can harm us, and we don't take the proper precautions. Now, for us Muslims on a spiritual level, this parable is referring to life in general. We start off as very young, as that water. The crops start coming out. It's very small, but really worthless. There's not much you can do with it. But with time, the crops continue to grow. Like us human beings, we get older and older. You start off as an infant. You need your mother to change you. You need your mother to feed you, your parents to feed you. You need them to support you. You then start going to school. There's a little bit of independence from your parents, but at the same time, you're still under the control of the rules of school, and you're learning, and you don't know how to do much. And then step by step, year by year, decade by decade, you continue to grow until a person hits their 50s, or 60s, or maybe even 40s, and they reach their pinnacle, their prime. I am at a high level, a high position in my corporation or my company. I am a millionaire. I am with so much energy and ambition. I'm the one leading, not being led. I'm the one giving the commands, not being commanded, etc. Right? So like the crops grow, we as human beings grow. Now, the one difference that I can pinpoint between this parable and the parable in Surah Al-Kahf is that this parable in Surah Yunus is talking about an unexpected death. So ataha amruna, our command comes at an unexpected time. That's unexpected death, and that's life. Life is fragile. Life is very fragile. In fact, politics and nations are such a fragile thing. As I learn more and more, and I'm introduced to new information, I used to think that America as a polity and a government is so strong, and it is. But at the same time, when you look at all the elements, all the variables in play, whether it's America or the Ottoman Empire or the Umayyad Empire dynasty or whatever, think of any superpower that has come across human history. Despite their strength and their might, and no doubt they were strong and mighty, that doesn't negate the fact that there were so many other variables that bring so much vulnerability and fragility to that nation. There are hundreds of militias in America, and they have guns and they're armed. And what happens when these people start revolting? What really weakened the Umayyad dynasty were the militias who we call the Khawarij. They would pop up here and then pop up there, and the Umayyad army and the government is so focused on them, trying to stop them here. It's like whack-a-mole game, that it really depleted their treasury, and it exhausted the government, and it exhausted the people, and people became frustrated, right? So America's fragile despite its strength. The Ottomans were fragile despite its strength. The same thing with all these nations. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something comes unexpected and it completely destroys it. When Islam first came on the international scene, when the Romans and the Persians were the superpowers, right? They were superpowers. Both nations, despite a decade prior to that, were extremely powerful. Both of them declined very quickly over a period of a few years. The mighty Roman Empire, in a few years, was destroyed. It was split. The same thing with the Persian Empire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse is showing us our vulnerability. Anything can come. Is there anything guaranteeing you life tomorrow? Is there anything guaranteeing your situation tomorrow? So many things can happen to completely uproot the individual from what they felt comfortable with, or they felt that they were was protecting them. Now in Surah Al-Kahf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't stop in the middle. Rather, He continues and says that فَجَعَلْنَاهَا هَشِيمًا, or He says that the crops grow to the pinnacle, but then time goes on even more, and they become hashim. They become very lifeless, yellow, brown, and they become yabis. They become what's the word? Basically, they become the crops die. After being green, they become yellow, and what that's referring to is old age. So the person starts small, they grow to their prime, and then slowly they start reverting back to the state of a child. SubhanAllah. An elderly person is similar to an infant in that they need assistance doing the very simple things. They need help doing the very simple things in life. So that's the difference between these two parables. But back to Surah Yunus, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. And He says that we elaborate our signs and our verses to a people who, yet again, here contemplate. يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. This is the third time, I believe, or the fourth time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends a parable with tafakkur, to just remind us of the importance of contemplating these things. If we are not taking these variables, taking this illustration and seeing it and observing it in our lives, how is it going to become instilled within our own in our own minds and hearts? How is it going to affect our behaviors? So we need to do that. So that's the parable. The idea here is that we human beings are like crops. As crops slowly grow until they become ready for harvest, we are the same thing. Now the harvest time is our prime, mid-age, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it is. But here it's saying that like these crops can be afflicted with something that completely destroys it, making it worthless, we as human beings can be afflicted with something that can completely uproot us as well. Now, what's beautiful about this set of verses is tying the previous two verses with the verses that follow this parable. Now, the previous verses were really telling us how when we become attached to this life, it makes us inconsistent in our theology and our practices, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if He is saying that life, like the waves and like the storms and like the situation of someone being at sea, sometimes it's nice and it's cozy and everything is perfect. Other times a storm comes. That's life. Life, sometimes we're comfortable, we're doing okay, everything is perfect, and then all of a sudden a storm comes and starts shaking us. That's life. We all go through situations. Life isn't a straight line like this. Life is up and down. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is alluding to this fact. And by doing that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us what life is. He's pointing out what life truly is to further uproot our attachment to life. That's what He's alluding to. That's what Allah ta'ala alam. I mean, that's one of the lessons of this verse and one of the goals of these verses. Get that life, your attachment to life, uproot it bit by bit to where life becomes in your hand, not in your heart. And that's the concept of asceticism, which we don't have time to go into. You can check out my series Madarij al-Salikin, the levels of seekers, on the OCIF YouTube page. All the sessions are there, and they're uploaded, inshallah, as we go through it. So the first two verses of this set of verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us the reality of life. And we as believers, we take this to heart. Now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uproots the value of this life from our hearts and our minds, we're left with a gap and a void. The fact of the matter is, life is life. Life is a part of who we are. And removing it, although it solves half of the problem, there's another half of the problem that needs to be resolved, and that is the holes that are left, or the gap, the void that is left. We have attachments in this life. For example, I am attached to my phone. Okay, I'm just giving an example. If I make a resolution, I'm going to drastically limit my usage of my phone. Okay, instead of using my phone 2 hours a day, I'm only going to use it 10 minutes a day. Well, now I have a gap of an hour and 50 minutes. What do I do with that? It needs to be filled with something. Now, if I fill that with watching TV, I haven't really benefited myself much. But if I fill that with ibadah, for example, now I have done something good with it. So verses 22, 23, and even 24, the parable, all of these are actively uprooting our attachment to this life. Now we have the problem of that void. What does Allah say in verse 25? وَاللَّهُ يَدْعُو إِلَى دَارِ السَّلَامِ وَيَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Allah invites us to the abode of peace and perfection, the abode where no harm will inflict you. SubhanAllah, that's the word salam. The word salam comes from the root salima, which means to be free from harm and deficiency. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointing to the harms and the problems of life. Now He is calling us to the life where there are no problems or harms. SubhanAllah, look at how intertwined the Quran is. Look at how relevant all these words are, how precise and how detailed it is, so that we can, man, it's so beautiful. Study the Quran, learn the Quran. It is the treasure of our hearts and our minds and of life and of the next life as well. So you realize, you acknowledge that life is full of problems. Life is full of things that take away from our best capabilities, our best selves, our pleasures, our joys. Then know that Allah calls you to, and He invites you to Dar es-Salam, to a home where none of that happens, and He guides whom He wills to the straight path. So if you want to accept that call, that invitation to Dar es-Salam, to paradise, then know Allah is the one who guides you to the path that takes you to paradise. So ask Him for it, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that, yet again, gives us a shield from the vulnerabilities of life, from the unpredictabilities of life, from that which can harm us. So look at how one verse 25, resolves the problems of verses 22, 23, and 24, or the concerns of verses 22, 23, and 24. And He says that if you want that, it's with me. Ask me for it. Come to me for it. And that is something guaranteed. Life isn't guaranteed, but someone who reaches out to Allah for something, then that is guaranteed. How Allah answers it, that is His wisdom, but we know that the answer is guaranteed, as Allah and the Prophet ﷺ tell us. So accept that invitation, and really think of it that way. Think of it as an invitation from Allah. Someone comes and invites you to a wedding, right? Oh man, I know so and so. I can't say no. That's embarrassing, or that's not right. We have customs, we have traditions. I can't just say no. I have to go, even if it's something for 15 minutes. Just go and congratulate them and drop a gift off and then leave, right? Like we feel embarrassed rejecting an invitation to an event. Are we going to reject the invitation of Allah to paradise? And when you think of this verse and you think of this invitation, think of it with your heart. Think of it, Ya Allah, you're inviting me to be close to you, to be in a place that is perfect, full of pleasures, better than this, I accept your invitation. Think of it with the heart. Right? And then the verses afterwards start elaborating the situation of the next life. The life and our attachment to this life has been uprooted. What that does is we need to fill that, and we need to fill that gap, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it by inviting us to the next life with the optimism of the next life of paradise. Likewise, by uprooting this life from our hearts, we begin to ponder what else is out there. Someone who is living a life of hardship and of problems, what that often does is they start questioning life itself. Is this really it? Or even people who have reached the highest levels of pleasures in this life. They have reached the level of wealth where they have experienced it all. What you find, subhanAllah, many times is that these people, because they experience life and they're honest with themselves and they know all that life has to offer, they say, this can't be it only. When Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Jackie Chan, they say that my inheritance, all my wealth is going to charity, right? I think Warren Buffett donated like 99% of his money. Why? Because he realized he knows what money can get him, and that is very limited. And therefore, they pursue something of higher value. So the more we are able to disconnect ourselves from this life, our hearts from this life, not our bodies, not engaging life in general, not working and doing what we need to do to sustain life, whether it's at the individual level, the family level, or the national level. But the more we disconnect our hearts from this life, the more we seek something else. And thus we leave room, or we make room in our hearts for the next life, attachment to the next life and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I hope this parable was of some benefit to you all. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it from us and to help us implement these verses so that the next life is our focus and not this life. To all those who said Assalamu alaikum, then wa alaikum salam to you. To Amal, who says Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Mubarak to you too. If anyone has a question, I'll give a few moments so that the delay can reach up, and I'll be more than happy to answer. If not, then I will see you all tonight, inshallah. Wa iyyakum, Sister Fariba. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow my words to be of some use to you. The goal is to bring our hearts closer to Allah and to turn our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that happened, even a little bit, then alhamdulillah, then all praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it didn't happen, then that's my fault and my own shortcoming. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to overlook them. Okay, inshallah, we'll go ahead and conclude. I hope to see you all tonight. Please don't forget to continue to support your local masajid and OCIF. The fact of the matter is, as we all know, it goes without saying that Ramadan is the month where it sustains most of the year, of the masjid fiscal year. So please let's not let our distance from the physical masjid distance us from supporting the masjid itself. So your rewards on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is the month of generosity, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.